We'll have a recording of it. From time to time, you'll hear a little bell ring that's just telling me that somebody else has arrived. I apologize for that. Nonetheless, thank you very much for joining today as we cover yet another topic in Sales Pro, professional selling skills. Today, we're going to be dealing with customer concerns. Now, many of us for years have been familiar with the fact that when you make a sales call, you deal with different kinds of customer attitudes. And quite honestly, you deal with your own attitudes as you make a sales call. There are a lot of emotions and so forth that take place for people when they are going on a sales call. I recently talked to a salesperson that told me that they become very intimidated when they make sales calls. In particular, when customers raise objections. Now, one of the things I want you to notice right from the very beginning as far as this topic is concerned, I have not called this dealing with objections. My whole focus is understanding that when a customer raises a concern, which we might typically call an objection, they are actually expressing to us a desire to work with us or an interest in knowing more about what we offer in order to help them become more productive and profitable. So the presence of a customer concern and our ability to deal with that concern actually helps us on a sales call, because what actually is happening is the customer is evidencing a desire to do business, but they want to set aside some of the concerns that they might encounter as they work with us, or they elect to set aside what they're currently doing to do something different. Now, one of the attributes of selling that I make clear to all of our students is your greatest competitor is not someone else that sells your product. It's not someone else that sells a comparative product. It's quite frankly the comparison to what the customer currently does. For example, if I sold lawnmowers and the customer is currently hiring goats to come in and graze on their lawn, they wouldn't have a need for a lawnmower because the goats are doing a pretty good job for them. So the competition in that case is not the other lawnmower supply company. It's the farmer that brings in goats. Maybe some of you saw the news this past week. About 125 goats snuck out of a corral and started munching on all the grass in a particular neighborhood. So I share that story. So our greatest competitor is the status quo. It's what that customer is currently doing in order to conduct their business or to be more profitable. So the very first thing we need to understand about dealing with customer concerns is there are three types of concerns we're going to address in this webinar. At our last webinar, I dealt with the topic called dealing with indifference. And quite honestly, I would tell you that 65% of the concerns that you will run into are indifference. That customer may be happy with the status quo or the way they do what they currently do, and they are indifferent to your offering. So in our last session, we took that one concern and dealt with it. If any of you missed that session and you'd like to have a rerun on it, I do have a video. Just drop me an email indicating that you'd like to have a copy of the last webinar on indifference, and I'll see that you get a copy of that webinar. Anytime I can help in that regard, I'm happy to. So we're going to restrict our focus today to the 3 other types of concerns that you will encounter on sales calls. These are skepticism, misunderstandings, and drawbacks. Now, in order to deal with skepticism, misunderstanding, and drawbacks, one of the most important things we have to understand as sales professionals is, as we hear the concern, each of these concerns is dealt with in a slightly different manner. So once we make a determination that there is a concern present, we must ascertain, are we dealing with skepticism? Does this customer doubt perhaps a feature or benefit that I've described to them? Or have they misunderstood something? Does the client think that I can't provide something that my product actually can provide by virtue of maybe getting confused, talking to a lot of different vendors, or having beliefs about our product line? They may simply misunderstand what our capabilities are or what our product's capabilities are. Now, the third and final customer concern, I call it the Henry Ford customer concern. It's called the drawback. And the reason I call it the Henry Ford concern is Henry Ford used to famously tell people when they wanted a different color Model T Ford, he says, you can have any color Model T Ford you want as long as it is, and I think you probably finished the sentence with the word black. Because most people know that Henry Ford set up his plants in a manufacturing environment. He had one color paint, and that was black. Everything was painted black. So when the car came together, it was a beautiful, shiny Model T Ford. So his method of dealing with a drawback, or if a customer was dissatisfied with the presence or the absence of a particular feature or benefit, is he would outweigh the feature or benefit by sharing with them things that the Model T Ford would provide that the color of the car would have no difference on. And for example, at that point in time, the comparative status quo was you needed to muck your barn, or you needed to feed your horse, or you needed to hitch up the carriage, or you needed to change the wagon wheel, because all of those were ways in which people transported themselves. So a drawback was simply something that you needed to outweigh, either through previously determined benefits or benefits that you would, once you determine that there is a drawback, that you would find working with that client. Now, all of you should have received a packet where this next exercise is going to be highlighted. And just to give you a heads up on that, the pages that you're going to go to look something like this. I'm going to be covering one by one these different type of customer concerns, and you'll find the corresponding concern on the sheet. Now, if by some chance you didn't download the sheet, I would just simply take out a sheet of paper. You're not going to submit this for review. I'm not asking you to put it in the chat window. I just want you to work with it yourself. All I want you to determine is from each concern that I put on the screen, what type of concern are we dealing with? Are we dealing with a drawback? Are we dealing with a misunderstanding? Or are we dealing with skepticism? Now, when we get to the end, we'll go back, we'll review them all, and go from there. So for this first one, I need to get 24-hour support services in place right away. And there is a subscript on this that says it takes more than 3 months to set up round-the-clock service. So the customer says, I need to get 24-hour support service in place right away, and we know that it takes more than 3 months to set up round-the-clock service. So what type of concern are we dealing with here? Is this drawback, misunderstanding, or skepticism? Just note that on your sheet here for your own use. We'll come back to it later and tell you whether you got the correct answer or not. We'll go to the second one. You mentioned that you could deliver the materials next week. I don't see how that's feasible. Customer says, you mentioned that you could deliver the materials by next week. I don't see how that's feasible. Is that a drawback, a misunderstanding, or skepticism? We'll go to the next one and pick up the pace a little bit. I don't want to do business with a company that does not follow environmentally sound practices. I don't want to do business with a company that doesn't follow environmentally sound practices. Now, your company follows environmentally sound practices. So what type of concern is that? Is that a drawback, a misunderstanding, or is that skepticism? I like the idea of adding some artwork to your decor, but I don't have anyone who is knowledgeable about art. Your company employs a team of art and interior design specialists. That's the backstory. Now, once again, are we dealing with skepticism, misunderstanding, or is this a drawback?
Okay. Hey, Jim, we can't hear you. Jim, we can't hear you.
Can anybody text me now? Are you able to hear me now? Nuts. Okay, Lindsay, you can hear me now. Okay, thank you, folks. I don't know what happened other than the fact I told a few people at the beginning of the session that we've been dealing with a lightning storm here in Southwest Florida. I've got my screen open. Are you still seeing the material on the screen? The screen is paused. We can see it. Thank you. Screen share is paused. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one and I'll speed this up a little bit. Your system won't do us much good because our people don't have the expertise they need to make the most of it. And there's no special expertise required to run the system. Okay, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to encourage you to look at the material that you have in your kits. You can do some more of these as you move forward. For the sake of making up for lost time, I'm going to jump ahead and I'm going to go through these. I'm going to give you the answers. And you can go back and kind of dissect why each item is what it is. We'll see some that we've already done here. Is this large enough on your screen or should I make it larger? Okay. Okay, I need to get 24-hour support services in place right away, and it takes more than 3 months to set up round-the-clock service. This is an example of a drawback because you, as a provider, can't put the support system in place right away. Right away for you is 3 months. So there's enough work that needs to be done that you've got inherently a drawback, and you're going to need to outweigh that drawback. You mentioned that you could deliver the materials by next week. I don't see how that's feasible. The customer is evidencing to you skepticism. They doubt or don't believe what you've told them. I don't want to do business with a company that does not follow environmentally sound practices. And your company does follow environmentally sound practices. So that's an example of a misunderstanding. I like the idea of adding some artwork to our decor, but I don't have anyone who's knowledgeable about art. Now, the backstory on that is your company employs a team of art and interior design professionals, so they misunderstand that they don't necessarily have to have an art connoisseur, but they can rely upon the art department that you have in your organization. I'm interested in buying a brand new car without spending a lot of money. This is a drawback because you only sell used cars. How could you tell me that your company offers a no-cost warranty program? Your competitor says you have hidden fees, and your warranty program has no hidden fees. This is purely a misunderstanding, and it's misinformation that the competitor has put into the marketplace. You say that you'll have the chairs in the office before our next meeting. That seems impossible to do. This is an example of skepticism because, once again, this customer is doubting or not believing what you have told them. And then finally, the example that I'll give you is we will need one report printed for each of the 3 different groups represented. And you can only offer one comprehensive report that provides all the group data in one report. This would be a drawback. Now, you've got additional examples that you can go through, and you will see the determination here of what type of concern that is. If any of you have difficulty interpreting why I've responded with the particular type of concern, you could certainly reach out to me. The importance of determining what type of concern is because now that we understand the concern, we need to deal with the concern by handling the concern in a unique manner for that particular concern. So what I'm going to go through with you right now is resolving skepticism. When a customer doubts a feature or a benefit that you describe, the very first thing you want to do is you want to probe. Probe to understand the concern. You know, I read a very interesting comparison between the word listen and silent. Listen and silent have exactly the same letters in them, and they evidence the primary thing that we need to do in dealing with different types of concerns. We must ask a question, a probe, but then just stop talking. Listen, be silent. Probe to understand the concern, because initially you may have a feeling about what that concern is, but you want to ask a question to get a deeper understanding of what's standing in the way of the customer believing what you shared with them. Now, once they have provided you enough information to move forward, the first thing you should do is acknowledge that concern. Now, I always teach in our classes that successful sales calls have 4 to 5 times the amount of acknowledgement as unsuccessful sales calls. So acknowledgement is just demonstrating to the customer that you heard what they said. You heard what they said. Now be careful about saying something like, I understand you, because they may interpret that as agreeing, that you're agreeing with their point of view. So if they're skeptical about your ability to deliver, and you can actually deliver, and you say, I understand your concern, they may only hear, he can't deliver next week. He gave me misinformation. Maybe they'll even think you distorted the truth with them. Now, the third thing you want to do is address the concern. And in the case of skepticism, the only way that you can address the concern of skepticism is to offer the customer what I call relevant proof. Relevant proof would consist of something that that customer believes about the proof source and where their concern lied. So in the case of deliveries next week, you might show them a roster of your trucks and the availability of the chair in the warehouse and the fact that you would deliver it. It may be proof in the form of testimonials that Jan Robbins did business with this firm before, and the company promised delivery within the week, and it was actually delivered faster than that. So the testimonial may attribute to addressing the concern. The final step that you use in resolving skepticism is check for acceptance of the skepticism that you have overcome. So 4-step process. You probe, you acknowledge, you address the concern, and you check for acceptance. That's how we resolve skepticism. Now let's move on to misunderstanding. Misunderstanding, we said earlier, is when a customer thinks that you cannot provide a feature or a benefit that you actually can provide. So in this case, we're going to use the same 4-step process. And in each example, we probe, we acknowledge, we address the concern, and we check for acceptance. There's a subtle difference with a misunderstanding, though, because when we probe to first understand the concern, but then confirm the need behind the concern. You see, we don't want to confirm the problem that they see with the concern. We want to confirm what is it that they desire, what is it that they actually need, what is the concern behind the need. Then, once they have expressed the need behind the concern, I want to acknowledge the need behind the concern. Yes, it's extremely important to know that our warranty is a no-charge warranty, and that you have the ability to use the warranty right away. So probe to understand the concern, confirm the need behind the concern, now acknowledge the concern as they expressed it. And very importantly, use the same language that they used when they expressed the concern. don't change the words. So if the customer says they want to go someplace with their little ones, don't start calling the little ones children, because little ones could represent something else. We did an example in class that little ones represented puppies. So if you start to talk about children and the customer was talking about puppies, they're going to be wondering what's going through the head of this salesperson. And then finally check for acceptance of your understanding of the misunderstanding. The final and third resolution technique is resolving a drawback. Now, this is where the customer is dissatisfied with the presence or the absence of a feature or benefit that you have described to the customer. If you probe and you determine that this is now a drawback, you want to confirm the need behind the concern. In the case of Henry Ford and the customer that wants a green Model T Ford, the need behind the concern is a different color than black. So we probe to understand the concern, and that need behind the concern is for a green Model T Ford. In which case, we know Henry Ford couldn't provide that because this was indeed a drawback. So the offset to that will always be the introduction of that customer to an aftermarket supplier of green painting on Model T Fords, which became a very common practice back during the years that the Model T Fords were produced. In any case, you'll acknowledge the concern, what it is the customer desires to have. Even if you can't provide it, you acknowledge that concern. One of the things you're going to do, though, is you're also going to outweigh that concern by reminding the customer of the things that you previously shared with them that would be important. So acknowledge the concern that they'd like a green card, address it from a bigger picture point of view. We've already spoken about the importance of your having transportation to get your family to church on Sunday, to conduct business in the town square, to eliminate the need to muck the barns and feed the horses, to be able to cover up easily during a rainstorm. The Model T Ford provides you that, and you can get there more rapidly on the highway system that's beginning to develop in our rural area. You want to outweigh the previously accepted benefits with the previously accepted benefits, that they like getting there faster, that they like the fact they don't have to feed a horse anymore and they don't have to muck the stables anymore. Now check for acceptance, because ultimately you're going to have them weigh the attributes that you can provide against the slightly differential issue of the color of the Model T Ford. So there we have the three types of concerns that we're dealing with. We're dealing with skepticism, where customer doubts you, misunderstanding, where the customer did not know really what you were telling them, and drawback, where you can't supply, or maybe there's something about your product that is more or less than what the customer wants to have. Now, resolving skepticism and taking a little deeper dive here. I want to give you another example of skepticism. The customer says to you, I don't believe you when you say that you can ensure a rate of 99% on these things. Now, you would resolve the concern by doing this. Probe to understand the concern. Yeah. it sounds as if you've never seen a vendor capable of guaranteeing such high quality. Acknowledge the concern. I know it may seem far-fetched to guarantee 99 out of 100 times our quality will be perfect. Now address the concern with relevant proof. Our customers have measured this quality ratio for us and have sent us several letters commending us on high performance. Now, I'm going to tell you something about proof sources that's really important. Any salesperson should have multiple types of proof sources. Proof sources can come in the form of people that will give you testimonials. They can come in the form of independent testing agencies. They can come in the form of independent testing laboratories, sometimes magazine articles. Anything that the customer will accept as a proof source is relevant proof. Now, if somebody rejects a proof source that you submit, say, for example, I have sold something to Lindsay in the past, and Lindsay is very satisfied. But the customer doesn't know who Lindsay is. So I say that I can introduce them to Lindsay to talk about the product, and they say to me, well, it's not that I don't believe Lindsay, it's just I don't know who she is and what she stands for. I'd really like to know somebody that I know that can give testament to the fact that it is a product that works. Remember, you're always looking for a proof source that the customer will accept. Once you submit that proof source, you check for acceptance. Would that give you more confidence in our quality guarantee? Okay, now I want you to think about your product right now. Think about your product right now and a time when a customer expressed skepticism with you about something that related to your product. Now, I'm going to unmute everybody. So at this point, if you have noise going on in the background, we're all going to hear it. I am going to open it up, and if you've got an example that you'd like to share or work with, send me in the chat window just simply a message, I've got one, Jim, and that'll be like raising your hand, and I'll pick on you, and we'll kind of walk through an example. If I get no volunteers, then I have one ready that we can do together. So does anybody have an example of a customer that you were dealing with that offered you skepticism about what you were selling them? This is where everybody gets quiet. Go ahead. I hear somebody ready to talk. We're looking for an example of skepticism.
Jim, I have an example, but I can't put it in the chat room right now.
Okay, that's all right. Can you just share it with me?
Sure. I had a customer express skepticism by saying it was a physician that said he didn't believe that my product stayed in the joint as long as we said that it did.
Okay. And the product actually does.
Studies have shown it has.
Okay. Now, who conducted the studies?
I believe there was one independent study, and then the rest of the studies were done by my company.
Okay, so we have one independent study that was conducted, and do I have that right? One independent study was conducted, and that offered proof that it would work. Did I have that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. So.
And also we have patients that that have told us that it stays that they don't need it again until about that time. So it kind of correlates with the study.
Okay.
But I don't have.
So patients have told you. Have the patients ever told you that in writing?
One has, actually.
Okay. All right. And is this a very common skepticism that you encounter when you're dealing with the docs?
Yes.
Okay. Here would be my recommendation. I would build a library of testimonials to the fact that, one, the research shows that it works in those situations. And then I would build testimonials that evidence the fact that it works in those situations. So that now you get in touch with another doctor who has skepticism, you can immediately turn and provide a reliable documentation, as the example says, relevant proof. So you can give relevant proof to them because it's an independent study. For example, some medical sales rely heavily on trade journal publications where articles have been published. But in another part of the magazine, the same company buys a full color advertisement in that magazine. So the doctors frequently do not see that as a reliable, relevant proof source, because they say, look, I can get a magazine to print anything at any time by buying ads in their magazines. Does that make sense to you? So what happens in a situation like that is you want to get an independent juried publication. For example, it used to be, I don't know if it continues to be the case, that the New England Journal of Medicine published juried documentation. So if they published an article, it would be an unbiased article. The dental industry, Dr. Gordon Christensen, who I'm familiar with, independently tests composites, dental instruments, dental chairs, x-ray equipment, and Gordon Christensen is highly regarded as somebody that when he writes a testimonial, people believe that that item. As a matter of fact, if you Google Dr. Gordon Christensen, you probably find videos of Gordon Christensen talking about different dental products that he likes. So what has happened is dental suppliers have built libraries of testimonials that relate to their industry. And that's what I would do in your case, is I would build a library of people who will write you written testimonials, who will talk to doctors, but most importantly, articles that can be written and refer to and about customers who have had this particular situation, and it starts to alleviate the doubt in the mind of the customer. Now, ultimately, the skepticism is going to be set aside by your telling the doctor, use it, try it, we'll be here if you have any problems or difficulties. I'd be more than happy if you reach out to me to help you one-on-one with developing strong proof sources like that. So thank you for providing that example. That was an excellent example. You're all at this point. Is there anyone else that has an example of skepticism that you would like to put forward? Okay, I'm going to jump forward, and I'm going to take the concept of developing a proof statement worksheet now that we were just talking about in this case. What I would build is a library of statements of skepticism that doctors may make, that clients may make, what product it relates to, what is the feature and benefit that corresponds to that, and what proof sources would you use and proof statements would you make? So this is the way your salespeople would get together in order to do this. The skepticism statement might be, I do not think you can lower my cost per mile. Now, the product that we're talking about here is automobile tires. So let's say, for example, this is a service shop where they sell tires. And the customer is skeptical that you don't think you can lower your cost per mile buying their high-priced tire. The related feature is the tread lasts for 50,000 miles. The related benefit is you have a lower per mile cost of tires because these tires don't wear out in 25,000 miles. They'll go 50,000 miles. So you might be talking about the difference between an off-brand tire and, say, a high-end Michelin tire or a tire that is known for its longevity. The proof source would be a written 50,000-mile guarantee by an independent agency that documents the comparison with the competitor's per-mile tire cost. This might also be a guarantee that you could use with a doc that doubts that your instrument is going to work in a particular type of situation. But you've got to be willing to back it up with a guarantee. So here might be the proof statement that I would use in a case like this. The performance of our tires has been studied by independent agencies, and the results have been documented in their report. I'd be happy to share a copy of this report as it is a testimony to the durability of our tread and the impact that has on cost of the tire over its lifetime. So as sales departments, collectively, we should be looking at the development of proof sources for the most common concerns that we run into when we sell our products. These proof statement worksheets give you the ability to do that, and I would invite you to use an Excel spreadsheet or something very similar to what I've laid out here in the book. Again, reach out to me if I could be of any assistance to you in developing proof source documentation. Now, resolving skepticism, just a quick review. When a customer doubts something, perhaps a feature or benefit that you described, remember, you probe to understand that concern. Acknowledge the concern. Be careful not to agree with the concern. Just demonstrate that you heard what they said. You know, it might be something like the customer says to you, I don't think you can provide me with the low-cost solution that I currently have. Acknowledging the concern would not be, I can understand that we're not cheap. You might say something like, it's important to determine that the choice you make is an alternative that's going to provide you the long-term benefit. Now you offer relevant proof in the form of, maybe this product gives you a warranty that they didn't know about. One of my customers sells projection equipment, and the bulbs in that projection equipment have 5-year warranties. the equipment that customers typically use today have a 90-day warranty on their bulbs. Well, this particular customer, through the use of new technology and lighting, knows that their bulb is not going to blow out for 5 years plus. So they have a warranty that says, if anything happens to this, we'll take care of it. Well, projector bulbs in some of the instruments that I'm talking about here can cost upwards of $250. So the relevant proof would be demonstrating to the customer the trade-off of, yep, it may be a slightly higher priced item, but the offset is you're not going to have this $250 fee to replace bulbs moving ahead. Okay, we're not going to do a partnering activity, but I will tell you that if you need more help with resolving skepticism and you want to partner with me on a phone call, I'll be happy to help you with that. I want to review resolving misunderstandings. Remember, this is when the customer thinks that you can't provide a feature or benefit that you can actually provide. You're going to start off by probing. Probe to understand the concern. But it's not the concern that we want to fix. We want to confirm the need behind the concern. So once you understand the concern, you want to continue to probe to confirm the need behind the concern. What is it that the customer really desires? So the customer may not understand that you can provide the product in various colors. So they say to you, it's unfortunate that you're not able to provide this in green, because they're familiar with the fact that you sell this item in blue. Now, you want to understand the concern. The item doesn't operate based on the color. The item operates based on, let's say we're talking about a tractor. Green tractor being John Deere, blue tractor being Ford New Holland. Confirm the need behind the concern. The need behind the concern is they need to bring the hay in when it's time to bale the hay. They need to use the backhoe. They need to use the bucket loader. Color is not going to influence the use of a tractor, whether it's blue or whether it's green. So you would confirm the need behind the concern being that you want to be able to use it to become productive on the farm or to become productive in the business. Now acknowledge the need behind the concern. It's important to have good equipment that's going to get the job done for you when you need to get it done, when you need to hay before the rainstorm, when you need to move the bales, when you need to use the backhoe. Confirm the need behind the concern. Don't focus on the blue color or the green color. Focus on the needs behind the concern that they misunderstood. Now, acknowledge the need behind the concern, describe the relevant features and benefits of your product, how it will address those issues, and check for acceptance. Here's an example of a misunderstanding that we'll go through. A customer believes that your tree service can't trim trees that are taller than 40 feet, and in fact, you can. You probe to understand the concern. Do you have trees taller than 40 feet in your office park that need trimming? Probe to confirm the need behind the concern. So it would be important to select a service that can care for all the trees regardless of the height. Is that right? And if the customer says yes, now acknowledge the need. It makes sense to work with one service that can handle it all. Now address the concern with the relevant proof and corresponding benefit. Actually, we can trim trees up to 60 feet tall with our specialized equipment, which means that all of the trees can be cared for easily. Does that address your concerns? So that's the steps that you have in your printout material in order to do it. Okay, and then I'm going to skip industry example, and I'm going to go to jumping ahead here, resolving a drawback, and we'll just simply do an example. We're getting toward the end of the hour. Some of you have voiced a need to leave. Thank you very much for being here. We will be finished before the hour is up. I'll give you this example of a drawback. The customer wants to receive your product 6 days a week, and you only deliver Monday through Friday, which is 5 days a week. You probe to understand the concern. My understanding is that you require the product 6 out of 7 days a week. Is that right? Acknowledge the concern. Given what you have what we have discussed, I see why this is important to you. Now address the concern. Refocus on the bigger picture. Let's step back a moment and look at what we have talked about so far. I'm going to outweigh the previously accepted benefits. You agreed our twice daily delivery capability during the week is a service that would provide you the frequency you need. You also said that your costs would be significantly reduced through our just-in-time inventory system. Now, unless your company is willing to deliver on Saturdays, that's all you can do. And if the business is significant enough, perhaps you would reconsider the drawback, but you want to outweigh it as best you can with what you have putting forward. Then check for acceptance. With those benefits in mind, do you think that the delivery schedule we can provide on weekdays would be sufficient to handle your needs? Now, if they say no, you're just not going to have the business. You're just not going to have the business. This is where I fault a lot of organizations for not working closely with the research and development arm of their business. There may be times that we have to adapt our business in order to serve a particular type of customer. Otherwise, we have to sell harder. We have to sell better to outweigh the derogatory parts of doing business with the customer. So, time being our enemy, I apologize for the hiccups we had. I'm becoming more convinced that some kind of erroneous click turned off the sound at the beginning. Sorry for that. I believe that it will record through that. So when I send the recordings out to you, you should get a copy of the recording that will cover that piece. I will remain on to answer any questions that folks may have. If you have a desire to ask any questions at this point, feel free to text me any questions, and I'm trying to open up the microphone so that if you have a desire to ask a question, I'll be here to answer it. I'm unmuting people, but it's not working. So it looks like the best thing I can do at this point is if you have a question, here we go. Unmute all. Okay. If anybody has a question, you'd like to shout it out, this would be a great time. I'd be happy to cover it. All the microphones are unmuted at this point. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us today. You can expect an email from me later this evening or tomorrow morning, depending on how long it takes for the recording to come across. Thank you very much for being here. Any questions, comments? Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a great evening. It is 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Call
Thank you.
anytime.